But Lisa, let's focus on the issue of the appeals court and the arguments that are expected today. What can we expect there?
I think, Jose, we can expect, in some respects, largely a repeat of arguments that we've already heard in Judge Boasberg's courtroom played out before this three-judge panel. You'll hear the administration say that the president has extraordinarily broad authority over foreign policy and national security concerns, that those powers are even larger than those arrogated to him in the Alien Enemies Act itself, and therefore that no federal court, let alone this particular judge, has the right to question his determination that a given group of migrants from Venezuela are, in fact, a danger to the United States and therefore have to be removed immediately. And from those who are representing this class of plaintiffs, the 5 initial plaintiffs that sued, and then the broader group of them that could be subject to the president's proclamation with respect to invoking the Alien Enemies Act to cover reputed members of Tren de Aragua, I think what you'll hear them say is that can't be right. And our system of checks and balances, the very question of whether somebody is or is not an alien enemy, is something that is fully within a court's power to determine. And here, all that Judge Boasberg did was essentially press the pause button so that he could make a longer-term determination. That issue about whether or not these folks are, in fact, alien enemies has fallen by the wayside as we've gotten caught up in some sideshow issues, including did the administration even abide by those initial temporary restraining orders from the judge that now the government is seeking to pause, Jose?
And so, Lisa, just to get us up to speed on these, rapidly changing things, is that temporary order still in effect today?
It is still in effect. Now, of course, there is an ongoing debate about what, in fact, constitutes that order. The administration arguing that the temporary restraining orders ordered by Judge Boasberg are only those things that he reduced to writing and do not include his verbal order on Saturday night, March 15th, that 2 planes that were already in the air had to be turned around in compliance with the order that he was setting down verbally. But this morning, Judge Boasberg issuing a 37-page opinion in response to a motion by the government to what's called vacate the TRO or dissolve it. So just as the administration is now going to an appeals court and asking them to press pause on that TRO, they simultaneously went back to Judge Boasberg and asked him to reconsider. This morning, he's saying, no, I will not do that, in large part because every person subject to the order is entitled under our constitutional system to an individual determination about whether or not he or she is an alien enemy underneath the meaning of the Alien Enemies Act, Jose.
Veronica, how strong do you think the administration's case is here?
I think it's a very weak case. I think that this is, in the end, going to come down to checks and balances. Congress did not speak to this, and the president wants to take this unusual power for himself to then use and deport the people who he accused as being Tren de Aragua's gang members to places like El Salvador.
And why is it that you think it's weak in the sense of is if this act is considered legal, then it would fall under the purview of the executive to deal with foreign policy issues and acts of war, taking into consideration that it is the House, it is Congress that declares war.
Right. And so I think looking back to the 3 times that it was used, in each of those instances, there was a declaration of war made by Congress. I think that is a very important factor because the authority for the president under this act is extraordinary. And so there needs to be a check and balance when extraordinary powers are used. And I think that's not present in this situation. There's also issues of whether this constitutes as a foreign government. I think there's a lot of issues in this case.
Veronica, what about the issue of migrants being sent from the United States to another country, a third country, essentially, because if you take it that the majority or all of these migrants were Venezuelans, they were sent to El Salvador and put in prison there. How unusual is that act?
That is a very unusual act. So, as it stands, the government does have the authority to remove people to third countries if that host country accepts non-citizens. And we've seen this for withholding of removal cases and some convention against torture, that people have that removal order. It's just been stayed because other countries aren't responsible for people who are not their citizens. So this is an extraordinary act. And I think the other issue here is that they're not just being removed to El Salvador, they're being removed to be placed in detention centers and prolonging their detention, something that would be very illegal if they decided to do that here in the United States, just detain non-citizens or put them into internment camps. And that is essentially what this administration is doing in this move by sending them to El Salvador.